Last week on the Results Driven Fitness Show,
Core is actually one of the most bastardized terms in the fitness industry.
Our first core training myth. Our first core training truth. Welcome back, everybody. It is the Results Driven Fitness Show. Today, we're back bringing you more core myths and truths.
Then we're gonna go into how we analyze our food journals to help you get better results.
Hope you're excited as we are.
I'm so excited. What's up, friends? Coach Ed here. We've been talking a lot about the core. So if you want to train your core properly, you want to make sure to mobilize your hips, address your T-spine, and then just work your way up the developmental sequence from ground base to quadruped to kneeling and up to standing. Come out on the floor and check out how it's done.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're happy to have you here to learn more about core myths and truths.
Last week we went over the first two core training myths, and part of that was just the fact that people think the core is mostly the abs and that we train it through mostly flexion and rotation. So that relates directly to the third myth, that we're progressing our core training strictly through increasing reps and increasing weight. So if we think of those first two myths that I mentioned, where we're training the abs and mostly through flexion and rotation, people typically try to do more crunches or add more weight or more plates to the crunch they're doing.
And that brings us to our third core training truth. We're going to train the core by going from static to dynamic positions or using weight in static positions and then eventually moving them. We're gonna go through the developmental sequence. We're gonna do exercises like the dead bug that you saw in the last episode where we're laying on our back. We'll do exercises in quadruped and half kneeling, eventually standing, just trying to get a healthy mix of different positions and patterns for our clients to build general core stability.
So relating back to what we talked about last week, we want to actually train the core by maintaining a stable spine and manipulating the limbs. So if we can take the limbs from a static position, like Mike said, and then train them in motion, that's progress and it's more challenging for the core. So there's two different ways you can progress from static to dynamic and up through the developmental sequence. One is just taking a general approach where we have a wide variety of really different options. Maybe one day you're doing a dead bug, the next day you're doing a bridge, so you're checking two different boxes when it comes to ground-based movement. One day in quadruped you're crawling, the next day maybe you're doing a quadruped iso pull-through. Either way, you're getting variety, and if you have a well-rounded movement practice, you're likely to not only progress your core strength, but improve your overall movement. Another option is to take a pattern-specific approach. We use the functional movement screen to analyze movement at Results Driven. And one of the main patterns that we have to address with our members is the active straight leg raise. Without knowing a ton about it, just understand that the active straight leg raise asks for you to have mobility and control through the hips and core when the legs are in different positions on each side. So if we're trying to address the core, we may want to bias more unilateral movements. So we'd want to stay away from a two-legged bridge or a quadruped four-point breathing because you're doing the same thing on both sides of the body at the same time. You may have better results going towards a single leg bridge, a dead bug march, or a push-up position valve slide hip flexion.
So that was all very sciencey. And typically when people think about core training, they're just thinking about making it a separate day. So they're gonna show up to the gym, they're gonna train their abs and do some cardio. which typically means, and I say this from personal experience, I'm just gonna skip that day and not show up. Or they treat core training as something that just naturally happens. So if you lift heavier, your core is just gonna magically adapt.
So how does core training really relate to strength training? Core training is performed to fill the gaps, help you earn higher level movement, and restore authentic human movement. Really what that comes down to is we're just looking at what you're not getting in your program out of all of the fundamental human movement patterns, and in certain situations, peeling things back in that developmental sequence and spending more time in kneeling or quadruped or on the ground. And if you do those things, you're addressing the core. So really the big takeaway on this is that core training is not what you thought it was. It's not just about getting your abs sore and flexing and rotating and doing sit-ups and doing weird stuff with your feet hooked into equipment and with a medicine ball. What it comes down to is we're just using smart progression, and we're doing movements in the different positions that we originally gained stability as babies. If we gain stability on the ground, then we gain stability in quadruped and kneeling and standing, and then peel back to those positions whenever necessary. If we do it with the appropriate posture, address your grip, address your foot connection, and make sure you have the right breath, you're gonna get a stronger core and you're gonna improve your movement.
So like we said in the last episode, a lot of people rely on their core training to help tone their core. And what we alluded to and we gave you the starting steps is that food journaling is the best way to start toning your core. Eating healthier is the best way to start toning your core. So in the last episode, we gave you just the starting steps to start getting there. Now we're gonna tell you how to look at what you've written down and how to analyze it so you can continue to make progress towards toning your midsection.
So just so we make sure we're all on the same page here, when people typically say they want to tone up or they want to tone core, what they're telling us is they want to be able to see the work they've been putting in. They want their body fat to be low enough that they can see the muscles around their midsection. So when you're analyzing your food journal, it depends on where you are in your process. Are you surging? Meaning you're putting all of your available time and energy into making a decent amount of progress towards your goal? Are you just working on one habit at a time? If you're working on habits, just review habit 1, 2, and 3. Analyze each meal of the day and note how many times you achieved that habit. Based on, for example, eating every 2 to 4 hours, the first habit, we expect you to eat around 35 times per week. Did you eat 35 meals, including meals and snacks with that habit? By working towards this, it's a great way to build small victories in your process.
Typically, we start telling people to food journal when they're surging. It's the same approach. We're going to be eating every 2 to 4 hours, but now we're also going to be tracking your starches. So how many times did you have sugary foods or drinks, caloric beverages, or starches that weren't after a workout? We're gonna take those meals and consider them off the plan. So to start analyzing your food journal, we wanna find a percentage of time off the plan. So we're gonna tally your total amount of meals, the times that you had meals off the plan, and how many times you followed the habit that you were supposed to follow.
So if you know the total number of meals you had, and you figure out how many times you were on and off the plan, you can figure out your percentage. What we're essentially trying to do with people is figure out the total amount of time they can be off plan and still make progress towards their goal. In these types of situations, a lot of times we're talking about fat loss. We notice with our members that most people fall in the 10 to 15% of the time off the plan and are still able to make progress. It doesn't really matter what your percentage is, as long as you figure it out, because then you can hold yourself accountable to that number. So now that you understand how to food journal and how we analyze the food journal, we have to be real for a minute. We have one of two things happen when we talk about this. One option is people are like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna work on the habits and I'm gonna progress towards that number that's gonna help me. The other side of the spectrum is people get a little overwhelmed or confused about the process. Either option can end up with people just falling off at some point. If you're somebody who is all in, eventually you run out of motivation. If you're somebody who is a little confused in the beginning, then obviously you don't start. So next week, we're gonna go over one of the strategies we use with our clients just to make this process a little easier. Whether you're coming off of a surge or you're just not quite ready to dive in. And it's just about making 3 good decisions every day.
It's just that simple. And we're going to show you how we work core training into our principles and progressions here at the gym. You know what we think about core training. Now we'll show you how to apply it.
Thank you for watching another episode of the Results Driven Fitness
Show.
We appreciate your support and attention. Please take a minute to like, share, comment, subscribe, follow us on all the social media things. We'll see you next week, friends.
Good luck with the core.
All the core. What? Take 20. Now I'm getting nervous.
Having Shit, this is...
Progress from dynamic